Hello everyone, welcome to Southern Cross Amateur Astro. I'm Mark and I'm bringing you something a little different today. This is my first ever unboxing and install video, and we're going to be doing it on the Gemini Automatic Astro Focuser Pro. Now, I stuffed up a couple of things during this video, during its recording, like having the camera too close when I was doing the unboxing and install, but I'm learning, so it'll get there in the end. Now, before we actually get into doing the unboxing and install, I just want to give you a few thoughts on this product and the support for it. So I'll get straight into that one. So this is just going to be a few of my thoughts about this after looking at it and investigating further. Now, the first thing is there appears to be two versions of this. The one I've got is marked as an Astro Focuser Pro, but I've seen online images where it's called a Star Focuser Pro. Whether there's any difference between the two of them, I have no idea. I can only work with what I've got, but just be aware there is a different one. I don't know which is the oldest one, but you might find there's a bit of difference between what I've got here and what you get. The next thing is ongoing support for the product. I'm a bit wary here of whether you'll actually get ongoing support for it. There doesn't appear to be an actual website for the company that manufactures them. They're only available through generally AliExpress or a few sellers on eBay. Even their driver downloads is hosted on Google Drive, so future support may not be there if you have an issue. If you don't have any issues with it, that's fine, but I would be wary about getting ongoing support in the future. And the final thing I want to point out is if you use an ASIAir to control your imaging sessions, forget about getting one of these. Like anything else that ZWO make for themselves, it's not compatible with the ASIAir. This is one reason I've avoided the Air, is simply because I now have 3 different manufacturers for my focusers. I've got a couple of different camera models from different manufacturers, and they're just not compatible with the Air. So that's main reason I've avoided the Air. If you're happy with the Air to stick with ZWO products, that's fine. I just like to have a bit of choice. So just remember that it will not work with your ASIAir. And considering this is less than half, down to almost a third of the price of the ZWO equivalent, it is certainly hitting you in your hip pocket if you are stuck going with the ZWO version. But there's just a couple of things to look out for. So different models, I don't know if there are differences in them. Lack of ongoing support may be an issue. I have no idea on that one yet. And your ZWO ASIAir is useless with this. Having got through that, we'll get on now to the actual unboxing. So this is the box the Gemini Focuser comes in. Looks pretty well packed. It does have a couple of instructions on here. Connect the cables before installing the software. If you use INDI, it tells you which driver to use. Do not plug in the temperature probes or remote while the unit is powered on. Take the cover off the batteries if you're going to use the remote. I didn't get the remote, so I'm quite happy with that. And they'll release driver updates at the following link, which is actually a couple of QR codes. You've got one to go to a Facebook group and another to go to their software download, and I'll post a link for that in the description as well. And then there's the manufacturer details down the bottom there. So let's open this up and have a look. I only got the basic one without the remote control. It's pretty well packed, which is good. Throw that over there, I don't need that. Yeah, you get a USB 2 cable, a fairly solid one compared to what you get with the ZWO version, which is one of their flat ones, or when I got it, it was. The angled head is good. So USB 2 cable. Oh, the temperature probe, this looks solid enough, but it is pretty short compared to the ZWO version, which was quite long. And they've got different plugs, so you can't use the ZWO in this one without an adapter, I guess. But that's the temperature probe. a bag of screws and some washers. Oh, that's good. The ZWO doesn't come with washers, and you get a bit wary tightening down the screws on that one. This bracket you get, almost identical to the ZWO version, except the ZWO one's got a couple of rails on this side. I think I prefer the flat ones anyway. Probably keeps down the weight a little bit, but yeah, overall they're about the same, so not much difference there. You've got 3 couplings that come with it. I won't be using any of these simply because I'm going to use the coupling that I had on there originally with the ZWO, and of course the actual focus motor. I'll put that out of the way. Get this out of that bit of plastic, and this is the focus motor. As you see, you've got separate connections for the hand controller and the temperature probe, which is better than the ZWO version, which you can only have one or the other plugged in. Your USB 2 port, and in here is a little red light that comes on when it's powered up, so you'll have a little red light. It'd be nice for it to be off, but you can't have everything. I never bought the hand controller for it. When I purchased my ZWO one, I bought the EAF hand controller, and I've never used it, so waste of money.
You have a message from God.
Why do things happen when I'm in the middle of something? It's just telling me I got a text message. I'm not going to start this again. A little bit of play in there. Feels pretty solid, though it doesn't weigh anywhere near what the ZWO one does. This weighs a lot more. Size wise, height's about the same, but as you can see it's much wider. It's much wider issue, so there's that there. Like I said, the ZWO seems beefier in weight wise. There's a little bit of play in there. I don't know if it's going to make much difference once they're connected. I never had any problems with the ZWO one, but that's a comparison of the two, just so you can see them. I don't think either one's better than the other at the moment. It's just you got to remember this is a little bit bigger, and that's what you get in the box. Nothing more, nothing less. I think it's time to move on to installing it. So we're going to install it on my Sharpstar 6180 PH3 here. So I'll get into that. Okay, now for the installation and what you need. You've got your various screws here. There's 4 smaller ones that come with. You need 2 of them to screw it in to your focuser itself, and you need to select whichever size suits yours. If you don't, you'll have to find, if you don't have ones that'll fit your scope, you'll have to find some. So I'll get rid of them, I don't need them. Then you'll need one of the couplings. As I said, this is one I'd used previously, so I'm going to use that mount, and of course your telescope. Now you may notice that I've mounted my telescope with the focuser on top. There's a simple reason for that, is that I sometimes use my EQ6R Pro mount with this one, and what happens is with the focus motor, with the focuser down, the focus motor is down at this level, and it actually will not go on my mount. With the Vixen and the Losmany type mounts on it, it cannot get down to the level, so I mount it up there, it's out of the way. But let's get into it. You also need, definitely need a 3mm Allen key. That's for these screws here, and depending on your telescope and your coupler, you'll probably need a 2mm one as well. So installing it is actually quite easy. You simply find the screw on your wheel here. It goes on the rough side. Loosen that off and take it off. So we don't need that anymore. You will notice that one side of this, as well as one side of the focus motor, have a flat side. You must ensure that one of these screws align with that. That's very important. Now first thing I do is take the coupler. As I said, you've got to make sure one's lined up with the flat side. Don't jam it really hard against your focuser, otherwise it's going to be rubbing down here, and that may lead to some issues of it sticking a little bit. So I'm going to tighten this one down a bit on the flat surface and tighten it on the other one. So make sure that's secured, and like I said, just make sure you haven't jammed it right in tight, and you can have a little bit of, there's a tiny little gap, probably less than 1 millimeter in there. So I'm going to tighten that down. Next I take my focus motor, it's going to be mounted that way up. So again, it, like the other one, needs to have the flat side at a particular screw point. Yeah, so that way there, and again with my 2mm, simply tighten it in. So that's on your coupler there. Again, make sure you're not jamming it in tight against it, give it a little bit of room to breathe, so it's not, I need to redo that one because I'd actually jammed it in too close. Just give it a little bit of room so it's not rubbing continuously against the body of the focuser. Okay, so that's done. Nice and tight, it's not going to slip or anything. And then you move your focuser out a tiny bit so that it's vertical, because that's going to have to go across there. Now the first thing I do is you take 2 of these and at least loosely tighten them to the focus motor. Oops, I'm dropping things and I can't see where they are. Doing well here. I hope this is coming out okay. I've never done a video like this before, so that's gotcha. So don't over tighten them, just loosely on so it's holding it in place. Now the thing you need to know with your mount, with your telescope, is where exactly you're going to be able to screw these in so it's mounted properly. I know with mine I've got 2 screw holes each side of the center, and I just put 1 in each side there. So once that's done, like I said, not too tight on that, give you a bit of play in it. Then I take these, which I know fit this one, and simply screw it in, and same on the other one. So now that's down, you can tighten these ones down. Remember, you don't over tighten them, you don't want them too tight. You gotta remember these are only generally aluminium, the threads and everything in it, it's quite easy to strip. Now that I've got that mounted and I'm quite happy with the position of it, I will now tighten up the other 2. And that's done there. And that's all there is to mounting a focus motor. It's all done and in there. As I said, if I've got it this way, this hangs down. When I put on my EQ6R with its dual saddle, it hits that and I cannot get it in. So that's why I do this up this way. That's just me. You might vary with yours, but that's it, fitted and installed, ready to go. In the next part I'm going to go through setting up the software to work with it, the software that comes with it, well, that doesn't come with it but you download for it, set that up, get it working there, and then I'm going to take it into APT and get it set up and do a focus run and see if I can get a reasonable focusing run done with it. So I'll be back shortly with the software side of it. So now that we've got the hardware all installed, it's time to start looking at the software to go with it. Now the first thing you might want to do is, as I said earlier, on the box is a QR code to take you to the website, which will get you to here. That's the website up there. I will post a link in the description so you don't have to worry about trying to get the QR code and go across. Then you just need to click on the EAF, which will open up the EAF folders you got here. Now the 2 things you definitely need are these first 2 here under the Windows software. We'll get to that in a second, but the ASCOM driver and the USB serial port driver. You will need to download both of them, and go in the Windows software, and you want to download the Focuser Pro console as well. That's to actually do the initial setup and get all the parameters correct with the EAF. You can, if you want, download the instructions as well, or just take a look at them. And if you purchase one with a remote control, it might be an idea to get the update tool so it can update the firmware. I know there were a few problems that have been fixed with the more recent firmware. I don't know if the new ones are coming with the new firmware, but as I didn't download this one. So download those two and the Windows one, and if you'd like, you can take a look at the instructions. A lot of people claim these are knockoffs of the ZWO EAFs, and when you look at the instructions, it's not hard to see why. Installation method on the telephone can refer to ZWO's EAF, so they tell you to look at ZWO's instructions, and they even have the ZWO EAF in their examples here. But it'll also go through and detail what you need to download and how to install it. Okay, so you might want all that, and well, we'll just get straight into it. I've already downloaded all this, and extracted the files as well. There's zip and RAR files. You'll need to extract them to wherever you want. Now, just so you know that the Focuser console, it and this other file, the PBB, are what runs the console. They're not an install program. It will run directly from these. So what all I've done is I've copied them into their own little folder on my spare drive here, and then created a link onto my desktop. But that's up to you. Now we're going to go through this. The first thing to install is the USB serial driver. Now I've noticed I've got one. If you want to get in, you'll need to get into your device manager later anyway. You go into device manager, and on your ports, I've got a CH340 already. I can't remember what that one's for. This is supposed to be a CH341, so it might be a bit different. So the first thing you do, just double click on it to install. Yes, I want it to make changes, and it's hidden itself down here. Click install, and it'll go through the installing. I don't know if it actually does anything else. Yeah, success. Okay, so now we can get out of that. That's installed, and we'll just quickly nip in here, go back into device manager, and we'll go our ports. It's still only got the same one, despite the fact it is actually connected, so I might not have needed to actually install that one. We'll see how we go. The next one, of course, is your ASCOM, and double click on that. Yes, accept the agreement, next, install. As you can see, very quick. I'm not going to look at the readme, that's just the driver there. So that's the install of the drivers. I'm just going to pause this for a second. I think I need to unplug and replug in the Focuser, so just give me a moment. Okay, so now that's done. I've disconnected and reconnected the Focuser. It's time to have a look at the Focuser Pro console. And this is the software you'll use for your initial setup of your Focuser. So I'm just going to double click on the shortcut I've created here. Now it automatically detects which COM port you're on. So it says I'm on COM 11. You have your connect and disconnect buttons. Refresh will clear the COM port, so if I hit refresh there, you can see it's gone. So I'll put it back onto it. Your exit button, of course. Then you have your max step count and your setting for max step, the focuser position and set position, go to and stop button. Now the go to, you enter your position in this box here and click go to. These ones along the bottom are your fine controls. If I remember correctly, the single arrows move you 1 step, the double arrows 10, the triple arrows 50, and these little dashes on each end will move at 100 steps. Then you have your motor speed. It defaults to being fast. I'm going to check the update on reconnect, and that way if I decide to change the speed, I can't see why I'd do it, but if I decide to change the speed, it will update it every time it reconnects. And then you have reverse. When you first set this up, depending on how you've connected it to your telescope, basically which side, which wheel you've connected it to for your focuser, you may need to reverse the settings. So instead of, you might hit an inward one, what you think should be an inward one, so a lower number, and it'll actually go out. If you hit a higher number, it'll actually go in. You need to reverse those settings if it does that. The lower number should always be an inward move. And then you have, I didn't realise this one has a heating capacity for the actual focus motor. I don't think I'm ever going to need it where I'm located. We very rarely even get down to freezing, but you may need that, and you can turn that on in here. So I'm going to go ahead and connect to my focuser, so 2 seconds for initialization, and this is what you come up with on your very first connection. 10,000 maximum steps, and it sets the position to be 6,000. Well, that's what I got when I started. I don't know if it'll be different for you. Now the first thing I want to do is change the max steps. I did learn one thing. I've had a little bit of a play in this before, but I did learn when you're setting your max steps, and possibly even the position, I'm not sure on that, you need to disconnect and reconnect for it to take effect. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to set a max of 20,000. Okay, max steps, hit the button, then disconnect, connect, and now that'll be set to the 20,000. It will remember that. If you don't do that, it will default back while you're doing any movements to the maximum being whatever was set, not whatever you've done this time. I discovered that because I set it to 50,000 and it only let me go as far as 10,000 because the default was 10. But disconnect and reconnect if you are changing your max steps. Now it's saying it's in the position 6,000. This is an incorrect position, of course. It's very unlikely the first time you connect you're going to be at that position. I know mine's out a little bit at the moment, so I need to move it in some to get to a position that is 0. That's what I'm looking for, is to 0. Now, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to move it in a few steps. That I'm going to halve this. So I'm going to go that to 3,000. Oh, not 30,000. And go to. So the focus is moving now. It goes into 3,000. The idea is to watch your focuser, and you need to check how far it is after each move. And when you start getting close in, you may want to lower how much you're moving. So move completed. I'm just going to go check and see how far out my focuser is. Okay, so that's moved it about half, or more than half of what I needed. So I might go now and just do 1,500 steps and go to. So I'm just trying to get it close as I can to being it all the way in, and we'll see what happens this time. Move completed. Okay, it's still not quite all the way in. I might move it another 300 with this. Go to. Okay. Try 200. I'm just watching the wheels on the focuser, seeing if they're turning. Okay, so that's currently actually all the way in on my focuser now. So I'm going to set this to 0. So that's my 0 position. Hit the set position. So new position is 0. Then I'm going to disconnect it again and reconnect, because I don't know if that's going to store it unless I do that. Okay, now I need to determine my max steps. So I'm going to try and go to 20,000 and see what happens. See if my wheel stops. I probably should do it in smaller lots, but I'm going to try and do it in one go. Hopefully it won't hurt anything. 20,000, and what I'm looking for now is to see if I get all the way out before it gets to this position. So I'm going to hit go to, and we'll see what happens here. I can give this a little bit of time. The wheels are turning, so I can sit here. I can see the actual wheels on the focus are turning, and I'll just wait and see when that stops, whether it's finished moving on there. Still turning. I don't like it hasn't got a countdown on how far it's moved. Still turning. The good thing about the telescope I've got, it's got a rack and pinion focuser, so it doesn't slide out. Okay, that's stopped turning already, so I'm going to hit stop on here. Oh, there you go. It's only managed to go up to position 14829. So that's the maximum position I can get to. So what I'm going to do is I actually might set it lower than that. So I'm going to set this to go back to 14,000. Okay, so I'll go backwards to that. Then I'm going to change my max steps to 14,000. I know it seems like a low number, but the thing to remember is that this is a refractor. Even with my old ZWO, it only went to 5,000 or 6,000 when I was in focus, so 14,000 is plenty. Like I said, it all depends on how much focuser range your particular telescope has. Of course, you know, an SCT or something like that require lots of turns, they're going to have a much higher range. But for most refractors and ones that have those type of focuses, your Newtonians and your RCs and that, they will probably have a lower number than connecting direct to an SCT. So I've set that as my max step. I'm going to disconnect again, reconnect, and that's done. So I now should be able to set this to 0 and go to position 0, and that should be all the way in. Like I said, I hate it there's no count on here to keep track of how close it's getting, so I've got to keep watching the telescope and seeing what's going on with it. And once this says focus move complete, I'll just go over and double check it is all the way in, and then I'll be all set. I might even drop that max steps down a little bit once this is done. I might drop it down to 13,000, because I shouldn't need to go that far. It's just to prevent your focus motor getting to a point where it can't move it anymore, but it's trying to move it. It can create some heat and may lead to damage. Must be almost done. Even on fast setting, they're not fast when you're moving them a long way. It's okay for little ones, but big moves like this ain't that fast. One little thing while this is doing this, I'll just let you know there is a little red light on the side of these devices, beside where you plug your hand controller in. There's a little red light on there that's always on. They need a way to be able to turn that one off, but beggars can't be choosers. So I'm just going to go double check I am all the way in now. Just give me a moment. Yes, that looks all the way in. So that's it. I might, like I said to you, I might set this back to 13,000. I don't need to go that far out anyway. Set max step, disconnect, and reconnect. So there you go, I've set it 13,000 maximum steps, so I'm not going to get quite all the way out, but I shouldn't need to go out that far, and neither should you. Just get close to the end of your run, and you generally won't need it. So okay, that's it for this. When you're done, simply hit disconnect and exit, and that's it. Now the next part is to get it set up and working in your imaging software. I use APT, but you need clear skies to get that set up properly for focusing and everything. I want to set up autofocus, so hopefully, like I said, I can get out in the next hour and maybe get that done. But I'll leave this part here. So that's the initial setup. The only other thing you might want to do is what's called measure the microns. That's how many microns per step your telescope is. I've got a feeling this is going to be a little bit smaller than on the EAF. The EAF came in just over 3 microns per step. Maybe this one will come up to 3.5, 4 even, maybe a little bit more. But I'll measure all that up as per my other video. I'll drop a link for that in the description. I probably need to remake that so it's more understandable. Some people are still confused by it. But that's it for this video. I'll be back shortly, hopefully with the focusing one for APT to get the autofocus working and everything. But for now, I wish everyone clear skies, and I will talk to you later. Take care, everyone.